You're sitting at your desk on a random Tuesday and you see something online. It's just $1,000. That's it. $1,000 for something you kind of want, maybe a laptop upgrade, a new piece of furniture, a vacation you've been thinking about, or honestly, it could be anything. And your brain, it immediately starts doing the math. You think about your paycheck. You think about your savings. You tell yourself, yeah, I can probably swing this. I've been working hard. I deserve it, right? 15 minutes later, you've convinced yourself that not only can you afford this purchase, but that you actually need it, and that waiting any longer would be somehow financially irresponsible, which is wild when you really think about it. And here's the thing that really gets me, okay? That $1,000 decision that felt so reasonable in the moment, that one purchase you justified because you work hard and deserve nice things, that one decision could literally cost you over $100,000 when you actually do the math. Over $100,000. We're not talking about the $1,000 anymore. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to scare you with clickbait math. I'm being completely serious. My name is John, and I've spent way too much time analyzing how people's financial decisions actually play out over time. And I've noticed a pattern that's both fascinating and incredibly depressing. Most people have absolutely no idea how expensive their impulse purchases actually are. They see the price tag and think about the immediate cost, but they have absolutely zero concept of the true financial impact of that decision, like none. If you've ever wondered why you feel broke all the time despite making decent money, or if you want to understand exactly how one bad financial choice can snowball into years and years of struggling, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because this is probably going to change how you think about every single purchase you make from this point forward. I'm serious about that. So let's walk through how this happens, because it's not as simple as spending $1,000 and being $1,000 poorer. The real problem starts when that purchase doesn't exist in isolation. Here's what actually happens. You buy something for $1,000 that you can't quite afford. Maybe you put it on a credit card. Maybe you use savings you shouldn't touch. Maybe you convince yourself it's an investment in your future or your happiness, or whatever story you tell yourself to make it feel less irresponsible. Right after you make that purchase, something interesting happens psychologically. You've crossed a mental barrier. You've already spent money you weren't supposed to spend. You've already rationalized a financial decision that your gut told you wasn't smart. So, what's another couple $100 here and there? You've already broken the rules. You've proven to yourself that you can justify big purchases. And suddenly, that mental barrier keeping you from overspending completely disappears. The $1,000 purchase wasn't just $1,000. It was permission. It was proof that you could spend money you didn't have, making every subsequent purchase easier to justify. I've seen this pattern repeat hundreds of times. Someone makes one big impulse purchase and their spending spirals out of control. They go from disciplined to constantly making just one more purchase that seemed reasonable. Before they know it, they've accumulated another $2,000 or $3,000 in unnecessary purchases. Now they're $4,000 in debt instead of $1,000. But here's where it gets really interesting, because that's actually not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is what that $1,000 purchase does to your debt situation if you financed it or put it on a credit card. Let's say you put this $1,000 on a credit card at 22% interest, which is a pretty standard interest rate these days if you don't have perfect credit. If you make minimum payments on that card, we're talking about roughly $20 a month in interest alone. Just interest. Just the fee for borrowing that money. That $1,000 is going to cost you an extra $300 to $400 just in interest payments over the time it takes you to pay it back. But most people don't just have one credit card and one purchase. They have multiple cards with multiple balances. They have student loans. They might have car payments. And when you add a $1,000 credit card balance on top of all that existing debt, something really interesting happens to your monthly budget. Your minimum payments go up, not by $1,000 a month, obviously, but your monthly obligations increase. And when your monthly obligations increase, your ability to handle emergencies decreases. Your margin for error shrinks. You went from maybe having a few $100s at the end of the month to cover unexpected costs to having nothing. And that's when the real problems start happening. Something breaks in your life. It always does. Your car needs a repair, a medical issue comes up, your appliance dies, your roof starts leaking, whatever it is. Life happens, and now you need $2,000 you don't have. But you've already maxed out your ability to save money because of all those monthly obligations, including that credit card payment for the $1,000 you spent on something you don't even remember buying anymore. So what do? You open another credit card, you take out a personal loan, you dip into your retirement account if you have one, you borrow against your home equity line if you have one. You find some way to get that $2,000, and now you're not just $2,000 in the hole, you're $3,000 in the hole because you're paying interest on the interest, and you're adding new debt on top of old debt, and the whole thing becomes this massive snowball that's rolling downhill, picking up more and more weight. And here's the thing that makes me absolutely crazy about this situation. People treat each decision like it exists in isolation, but financial decisions don't work that way. Every single financial choice you make affects every other choice that comes after it. That $1,000 purchase didn't just cost you $1,000. It reduced your financial flexibility. It increased your monthly obligations. It made you more vulnerable to debt spirals. It increased your stress and anxiety, and in a lot of cases, that increased stress actually leads to more impulse purchases because you're trying to cope with the financial pressure you've created for yourself. You're stressed about money, so you buy something to make yourself feel better, which creates more stress, which leads to more purchases. It's a vicious cycle that most people never escape. Let me give you a concrete example of how this actually plays out in real life. Let's say someone makes $60,000 a year. After taxes, they're taking home about $4,000 a month. They've got a good job, they're not wealthy, but they're not broke either. They have rent or a mortgage, car payment, utilities, insurance, and some other monthly obligations. After all the necessary stuff, they've got maybe $800 a month for discretionary spending and savings. That's not a ton of money, but it's enough to build some financial security if they're disciplined about it. Then one day they see something, it's $1,000. Maybe it's the new generation of some tech gadget. Maybe it's a weekend trip they've been thinking about. Maybe it's furniture for their apartment. Whatever it is, they put it on a credit card. Now, their credit card balance is $1,000, and they're only making minimum payments. So that $800 a month they had for savings and discretionary spending, it's gone. That money is now going to pay the minimum on that credit card, which is maybe $70 or $80. But they also still have the psychological impact of that purchase. They already spent the money. They already crossed that mental barrier. So suddenly, they're not just paying the minimum on the credit card, they're also spending an extra $100 or $200 a month on other small purchases that they're justifying because they're already in debt anyway. So now they're going backwards. They're not just not saving anymore. They're actually going into debt. 6 months later, they've paid maybe $300 towards that original $1,000 purchase, but they've added another $2,000 in new purchases because they got used to the idea of charging things to the credit card. Now they've got a $3,000 credit card balance and a car that needs repairs, and they don't have $800 a month anymore to handle unexpected situations. They've got negative money. They're making $10 less each month than they're spending, so they get the car fixed with another credit card. Their minimum payments are now so high that they can't afford them all, so they miss a payment. Their credit score drops, their interest rates go up on their other cards. Now they're paying more money just to exist financially. That $1,000 purchase has turned into $5,000 or $6,000 in total debt. And if they're not careful, and they don't make some dramatic changes to their spending habits, they could end up with $10,000 or $15,000 in credit card debt within a couple of years, all from that $1,000 purchase that felt so reasonable at the time. But here's where the math gets really crazy, and this is the part that actually keeps me up at night. Let's say someone goes down this path, and by the time they realize they have a serious problem, they've accumulated $20,000 in credit card debt. The average credit card interest rate is somewhere around 20 to 22%. At 21% interest, that $20,000 balance is costing them about $350 per month just in interest. Every single month, they're paying $350 just to keep the debt from growing, before they pay a single dollar towards the principal. If they make the minimum payment, they'll take about 7 to 10 years to pay that debt off, assuming they don't add any new charges. By the time they're done, they'll have paid an additional $21,000 in interest alone. They'll have paid $41,000 total to handle a debt that started with a $1,000 purchase. That's a 4,000% real cost for that original impulse purchase. But it gets even worse when you start thinking about opportunity cost. What could that person have done with the $20,000 they spent on debt payments over those 7 to 10 years? If they had invested that $20,000 in a simple index fund earning 8% annually, it would have turned into over $40,000. So by going into that debt spiral, they didn't just lose the interest payments. They also lost the opportunity to build $40,000 in wealth. So that $1,000 purchase actually cost them over $80,000 when you factor in the opportunity cost. And that's before you even think about the stress and anxiety and health problems that come from years of financial stress. Most people are completely unaware of this math. They see a $1,000 purchase and they think about whether they can afford the $1,000. They don't think about how it's going to change their financial trajectory for the next 7 to 10 years. They don't think about the 1,000 different tiny financial decisions it's going to affect. They don't think about how it's going to impact their ability to handle emergencies. They don't think about the fact that instead of building wealth, they're destroying wealth at an accelerating rate. The impulse purchase that felt so good in the moment becomes this anchor that drags them down for years. And the worst part is that once you're in this spiral, it's incredibly hard to get out. You can't just stop spending money on the things you need. You can't just decide not to have emergencies. You can't just will yourself out of a debt situation without making some serious and often painful sacrifices.